In this Magic Legends video, I'm going to be going through all the black cards or black spells in Magic Legends, showing you what they are and how they work in combat. Additionally, I'll be showing you the 2 artifact cards in the game as well, because even though they are not black, they can be in a black deck. Let's start with the sorceries first. The first one, Dark Gamble, makes it so that you consume this spell and discard another random spell, and in exchange you gain greater mana regeneration for 6 seconds. So your mana is going to fill up much faster after you use this, but you're going to lose a card. Butcher is a damage dealing spell that hits in an AoE cone in front of you, and does more damage to foes that have 50% or less health, so this is really good against weak enemies. Damnable Pact is a spell that allows you to draw spells in exchange for losing 20% of your health. If you press it once, you're just going to do this one time, but if you hold down the button, you can keep drawing spells in exchange for 20% more of your health. Drawing spells is handled a bit differently in Magic Legends than Magic the Gathering, and instead of adding another card to your hand, what's going to happen is when you consume a spell or you cast a spell, instead of taking 6 seconds to draw another one, you'll instantly gain a spell. So this will basically queue up a bunch of spells if you hold down the button that you can draw instantly. Unholy Boom is a spell that will buff your highest toughness creature, giving him Regenerate, meaning that if he dies, he'll respawn with full health, and Lifelink, meaning that he'll heal you when he attacks, and also +4 attack and -2 toughness. So he's going to lose some toughness, but gain attack as well. Vicious Hunger is a single target direct damage spell that heals you and deals damage at the same time. It's really good for keeping your health up and damaging an enemy. Wailing Souls is a damage dealing spell that deals damage on initial cast and over time in a line forward. It has quite a wide path, and it also snares enemies, and this is a really good spell for taking out a group of enemies at once. Annihilation is a spell that allows you to sacrifice all the creatures you control to deal a bunch of damage, and then an additional 150% damage of their combined attack to all the enemies around you. So the way this works is it deals damage once, and then after the creatures are sacrificed, it deals them again. Creeping Plague is a damage over time spell that hits in a cone in front of you that affects foes and spreads to other nearby enemies. So this is a spell that, might initially hit like 2 characters and then travel through like 20 if there are that many around. Impale is a very high damage dealing spell that targets one enemy, so if you want to just surgically attack one enemy like a champion or an elite monster, then this is a good spell. Grim Revival is a spell that allows you to resurrect a dead creature you control with the highest power and toughness, so your most powerful creature essentially, for 50% of their maximum health, so they're not going to have all of it. Keep in mind that creatures, they have about 5 to 10 seconds, I don't know exactly how long it is, I haven't timed it, after they die where you can resurrect them. So you can't resurrect a creature that's been dead for a minute. And also, if you don't have any creatures to resurrect, then you can cast 3/1/1 skeleton tokens, so it does have use even if you have no creatures out. Infest is a spell that deals damage and damage over time in a cone to enemies in front of you and applies lesser vulnerability, which increases the incoming damage. So if you want to hit enemies for a lot of damage and damage over time, plus debuff them, this is a good spell. Desecrate is an interesting spell because it causes a large AoE that deals damage to foes inside it, and if you sacrifice a creature you control, the lowest combined power and toughness, so maybe like a 1/1 skeleton or something, it deals an additional damage instantly when cast, so it's very versatile. Leech Outbreak is a spell that deals damage over time to foes in a certain area while healing yourself at the same time, and healing you for even more if you would, affect more foes with this dot. Parasitic Infection is a really interesting spell if you can pull it off well, because it deals damage over time to an enemy, one specific enemy, and applies greater vulnerability, which increases their incoming damage. So if you're attacking that enemy and you put this on them and they die, it spreads to the next target, and if you attack that target and they die, it keeps spreading and spreading and spreading. It can keep jumping around, and it can actually infect quite a bunch of people or characters. Unearth is an interesting spell where it targets one character, it roots them in place, these coffins come out of the ground, and it shoots damage at them 4 times in succession, and it's really good for just taking care of one target. Shadow Barrage is a ground-targeted AoE spell that essentially hits random enemies very quickly in rapid succession and gives them lesser weakness, which reduces the damage they deal. But what's really great about it is every time it kills an enemy, it increases the duration of it, so theoretically if you're attacking away in an area and this is up, you could keep it going for a very long period of time. Abyssal Flame is probably the hardest hitting AoE spell of all the black cards, and it deals quite a bit of damage over time, and it deals additional damage to foes with less health. So if you cast this, and then it takes foes' health down below 50, then it's going to start doing more damage to them, which is great. Moving along to the creature spells, the first one is Deathcursed Fanatic. This is essentially a 2/1 creature, which is actually pretty good for 1 mana cost. It gives you 1 mana back when it dies, so there's really no harm in putting this spell in your deck, because it's going to recoup the mana if you spend it, and 2/1 is really good for 1 mana cost. Drudge Skeleton makes an appearance in this game. It's a 2/2 creature in this case that regenerates, meaning that if it dies, it fills its full life up again. So you're going to throw this out there for 2 mana, it's going to be 2/2, and then if it dies, it's going to regenerate, which is great because There's a lot of effects that cause you to sacrifice creatures. You could sacrifice it and then it comes back to life, or maybe it dies and triggers another ability and comes back to life and can trigger it again. Bone Tip Archer is a 3/1 creature for 2 mana that hits fairly hard for a ranged creature in my opinion, even though it doesn't have a ton of health. But what's really great about it has the activated ability that it can gain Regenerate, meaning that if you draw this spell while it's already on the battlefield, you can give it Regenerate, which helps keep it alive, obviously. But one thing you may not know is that in Magic Legends, you can't have 2 of the same creature out. There seem to be certain circumstances that bypass this rule, but generally you can't have 2 of the same creature. So if you drew a creature spell of a creature you already have on the battlefield, usually you just recast that creature. But when they have an activated ability, instead of recasting it, you use that. Gruesome Reanimator is a 2/2 creature that summons 1/1 skeleton tokens up to a maximum of 3 for 30 seconds each. What's really great about this creature is that it will just keep summoning these skeletons about every 10 seconds or so. Even if you have 3, I believe it'll just summon another one and replace one of them. So if you have mechanics that, count as sacrifice creatures, or if you need to sacrifice creatures, this is a good way to generate creatures to be sacrificed. Or if you get a benefit for bringing creatures into play, this is also a great way to make that happen. Darksworn Cleric is a 2/2 creature that has lifelink for 3 mana. It does decent damage, and one of the things that's really cool about it is it actually throws an AoE on the ground that deals damage to foes over time. So not too many creatures actually do AoEs on the ground, so this is one that does. And again, it has lifelink, so that helps heal you. Drifting Shade is simply a 2/2 creature for 3 mana, and it has the activated ability of giving it +2/+2 for 15 seconds. So if you draw this card again while it's out on the battlefield, you basically buff it, which is pretty common for Shade characters if you've ever played Magic the Gathering. But what +2/+2 does is it actually increases the health and damage of the creature as well as the size of the creature. So you'll see a difference on the screen. Ghoulish Infector is a really interesting creature because not long after you summon it, it will target the highest toughness creature you control and will taunt nearby foes for 6 seconds, and also gains on death, deals 300% damage to nearby enemies based on its toughness. What's really great about the on death mechanic is that it lasts, as soon as it's on it lasts forever. So if that creature dies 5 minutes later, it still deals 300% damage to nearby enemies based on its toughness, which is fantastic. Note that if you cast it by itself, it doesn't put this ability on itself. Doomsigh Wraith is a nice creature because it deals damage over time, and a line has a special ability that does that and puts lesser vulnerability on foes. It's a 4/2 creature for 4 mana, so it can die quite easily, but it deals pretty good damage. Rotting Fentusker is a very, very good creature. Its damage gets buffed every time a creature you control dies, so if you have like a lot of 1/1 token creatures, this is great. But you will sacrifice a creature with the lowest combined power and toughness when you summon it, so again, if you have a bunch of skellies out, you're going to lose one, no big deal usually. And it does have a special ability that deals damage to all the foes in front of it, which is good, but it's a fairly beefy creature that does pretty good damage. Scathe Zombie is the iconic card from MTG is here in the game, and it summons 3 zombies that are 2/2 creatures for 4 mana. So if you're playing a zombie deck, this is really good because it's going to allow you to get out a lot of zombies really quickly. Cabal Knight is a 4/3 creature for 5 mana. It has lifelink, so it's going to heal you when it attacks, and it has a special ability where it attacks, like kind of spins its axe forward, dealing damage repeatedly. And because it has lifelink, this can heal you a lot, and it can hit, many foes at the same time. So combined with lifelink, it's a great way to heal you. Corpsefiend is probably my favorite black creature in Magic Legends. It's a 3/5 creature for 5 mana, and what's really great is it has high toughness. So cards like Unholy Boom can target it very easily because it's usually the highest toughness card you'll have out. But what's really great is that when another creature you control dies, it gets +1/+1 for each one. So if you have a lot of like 1/1 creatures running around, this is great because it's going to, get it all the way up to 5/5, at which point it'll use its special ability. It'll remove 5 counters and create 5 hazards that deal damage to foes inside them over 5 seconds. So you can keep triggering this ability over and over, and it's a really good creature and easy creature to keep alive. Dread Overseer is a 4/5 creature for 5 mana, and it gives other zombies you control +1/-1. Keep in mind that if they're 1/1, they will die if you put this creature out, so just keep that in mind. Scathe Zombies are 2/2, so that's not a big deal. They won't die from this. They'll become 3/1s. But it also has a special ability where it deals damage twice, and then does a certain amount of damage to foes in a cone. So it's a very good creature, and it seems to attack quite frequently. Abyssal Fiend is a very durable creature. It deals decent damage. It's a 4/4 for 6 mana, which is quite expensive. But what happens is periodically it's going to sacrifice a creature you control with the highest combined power of toughness, and it's going to gain that for 10 seconds. So this can be kind of a double-edged sword because you don't want it eating your strongest creature, but it can make it very, very strong. So if you can keep feeding it creatures, then you're going to make this creature very, very powerful if you can keep that, buff up. Like as soon as the 10 seconds expires, it uses it again, etc. because it will keep sacrificing creatures. Voracious Thrull is a 5/6 creature for 7 mana. Again, it's very, very tanky creature that doesn't die easily, and it can pull a foe towards itself. So it's very good at like pulling enemies to it and piling up enemies, and it's also really good at tanking because it doesn't die easily. Experimental Scorpion is one of the 2 artifact creatures I was mentioning, and it costs 1 less for every other artifact creature you control. So if you have Experimental Sentinel out, it'll cost 1 less, or a bunch of other artifact creatures, which I don't think are currently in the game. But also what's really great about it is that when it dies, it'll summon 3 1/1 spiraling artifact tokens for 30 seconds. This synergizes really well with Experimental Sentinel. Experimental Sentinel is a 5/5 for 6 mana, which is a pretty beefy creature, not going to die real easily. But what's great about it is when an artifact creature enters the battlefield under your control, it heals you for a whole bunch of health times the power of that creature. So when those 3/3 creatures come into play from Experimental Scorpion, when it dies, you're going to heal for a bunch. So there's a great synergy there, and it also charges forward in a straight line, dealing damage to enemies. Moving along to enchantments. Enchantments work a little bit differently in Magic Legends than Magic the Gathering. They all seem to have a 30-second duration. They're sort of like a longer sorcery in this game, although they're not considered sorceries. But Blood Pact is the first one, and it essentially gives your highest power creature lifelink. Lifelink allows that creature to heal you whenever it attacks, which is great. And this is good on, any beefy creature, and it's just not that bad of a cost at 4 mana. Mutation allows you to give your creatures +2/-1 for 30 seconds. Keep in mind this will kill 1/1 creatures that you have out, so you can use that to your advantage, or you can, be careful and not kill those creatures if you want to keep them alive. But there are a lot of mechanics in Black that reward you for creatures dying, so you may want to use this to kill some of those creatures if they're not dying very easily, or you might want to be careful and not kill your creatures if you're like having a whole army of small creatures out. Open the Graves is essentially an enchantment that allows you to summon a 2/2 zombie creature token for 30 seconds whenever a non-token creature you control dies. So this is like any regular creature, any creature that isn't considered a token creature. These will be in the description of abilities or spells, so you'll know if you're summoning a token creature or regular creature. If it doesn't say token creature, then it's a regular creature. And when that creature dies, you'll get a 2/2 zombie. So this works really well in conjunction with something like Dread Overseer that gives your zombies buffs. So that's it for all the black cards or black spells in Magic Legends. Be sure to check out our other videos for red, white, blue, and green as well. We're going to have one for each color. And be sure to check out the wiki if you need help with the game. We're going to have all this information on there as soon as the beta starts.